Minister, this is an incredibly important issue, so thank you very much for coming in yourself to answer it. The Taoiseach today said in the Dáil that the state could have acted but did not. And that's a very welcome comment from the Taoiseach. And he's also quoted today as saying that the abuse compensation scheme is not working. So again, another very welcome significant comment from an Taoiseach. This is a topic I have a deep personal interest in, having worked closely for a number of years now with the lads from VOCAD and Cray Lane in my own city of Limerick. To be honest, I'm absolutely disgusted at how survivors of historical child sex abuse have been treated by Fine Gael and by previous governments. These men are currently barred from accessing compensation for the horrific abuse they suffered, and the government has steadfastly stood in their way of justice. Last July, the government were defeated by 84 votes to 44 on a Dáil motion, which sought to allow victims of primary school sexual abuse to seek redress on the same basis of victims of residential institutional abuse. The Dáil instructed the government by a large majority to change how the scheme operates, but in the same arrogant approach that is a trademark of the Fine Gael government, you ignored it because, of course, you seem to know better than everybody else. The Dáil motion outlined how the state's Ex Gratia Scheme, set up after the Louise O'Keeffe won her European Court of Human Rights case in 2014, could be amended to include victims in cases who cannot prove a prior complaint. It would only cost, we told you at the time, €15 million. That is not much in the grand scheme of things. The prior complaint interpretation of the Louise O'Keeffe judgment is total nonsense, Minister, and you clearly know that, and previous ministers know that as well. It was designed by officials and lawyers to lock survivors out and keep the compensation bill down for the state, hoping that many of them would die and not be able to access any compensation. It is a despicable approach to take with survivors of child sexual abuse. The fight against the state the men from Cray Lane have put up with has been shocking. They were subjected to the most horrendous sexual abuse as children in Cray Lane National School in Limerick, but denied redress due to the barriers put in place by Fine Gael. Some of these men have shared their stories publicly. One of them, who was abused at the age of 8, said, and I quote him, "School was about survival. I'd be looking at the teacher thinking, just stay away." Another who spoke said he was abused at the age of 6 said, "I was screaming and had to be tied into a buggy with a rope to be brought to school. The children never spoke about it. We just kept our heads down and kept our mouths shut," he said. I know most of these lads personally. Many of them have never spoken about their abuse for years, with family and friends unaware what they went through. The government has forced these men to protest outside the Dáil gates, to try and get their story highlighted in the media, to travel to Brussels to highlight their injustice in the EU Parliament, and to have the Dáil debate, which the government has ignored. Louise O'Keeffe was dragged through the courts before she got justice and compensation, and it seems the government are content to do the same to the remaining survivors who were locked out of the redress scheme. The government's handling of this situation has been shameful. It is clear you don't understand the hurt and stress you're causing the survivors. The abuse the men suffered as children ruined their childhoods and left a terrible scar on many of their lives. You need to show compassion to these people. Can you please stop fighting these survivors of child sexual abuse in court and provide them with compensation that will allow them to get justice and move on with their lives? On the 7th of July, Minister Bruton told my colleague, 7th of July 2016, Minister Bruton told my colleague, Deputy Mayor Lou MacDonald, that, and I quote, "We have made payments and we will continue to make payments under an Ex Gratia Scheme." That's clearly not the case. Minister, yourself, you told RT News at the weekend that no one has been paid. So can you clarify this? It can't be both. Either payments have been made or haven't been made. So which is it, Governor Margaret?
Minister.
Margaret Camcorley, I'd like to thank the Deputy for putting down this question. It's a very important question, and also to acknowledge your intervention with regard to the Taoiseach's intervention today as well. We had a discussion earlier on this matter earlier today. The legacy of sexual abuse against children, whether in residential institutions, in day schools or in any other setting, is appalling. The Government calls on those who have evidence of prior complaint of abuse to bring that evidence forward in an open and transparent way to the appropriate authorities. There is an onus on all those who have information or knowledge in relation to child abuse that may bring closure to a survivor to come forward with that information. Prior to the Louise O'Keeffe case to the European Court of Human Rights, the domestic courts up to and including the Supreme Court had found that the state had no liability for day school abuse, as it was not the owner or manager of the schools, and while it paid school teachers, it did not employ them. The European Court of Human Rights found on the facts of the O'Keefe case that the responsibility of the state was engaged in certain circumstances. A central facet of this case was that there had been a prior complaint of abuse in respect of the teacher who abused Miss O'Keefe. In 2015, the state responded to the ECTHR judgment by setting up an Ex Gratia Scheme to specifically address the position of persons who had discontinued their proceedings against the state in the wake of a number of High Court judgments and the Supreme Court judgment in the O'Keefe case. In 2017, an independent assessor, retired High Court Judge Mr Eirlith O'Neill, was appointed to assess applications declined under the scheme. As of the 14th of May, today, 50 applications have been submitted to the scheme, 45 have been declined, and the remaining 5 cases have yet been determined. 20 applicants have sought an independent assessment. The Assessor's decision are awaited in respect of these cases. I look forward to receiving the Assessor's decisions on the cases, and his findings will be abided by. It is important to recognise that the scheme is addressed towards a specific cohort of historic discontinued day school sexual abuse cases which were impacted by the ECTHR judgment in the O'Keefe case. I am aware that survivors of day school abuse are pursuing cases through the civil courts and are receiving settlements either through the courts or on an out-of-court basis. The judgments have been secured against the actual abuser and/or the school management or patron. In the latter case, these have generally been religious congregations. The Department is also continuing to receive notices of discontinuance, reflective of the fact that the domestic courts will not find the state liable where there is no evidence to support that liability. In addition, the State Claims Agency has to date made settlements in 22 cases, many of which also involve authorities responsible for schools. In these cases, more than half the compensation paid has come from non-state parties. This is reflective of the shared liability in these cases. We have learned from our dark history of child abuse and put in place a set of measures to enhance child protection and make sure abuses of the past cannot recur. We are constantly reviewing these measures and strengthening them wherever possible. As part of this ongoing process of reviewing child protection measures, significant developments include the following: the creation in 2012 of a criminal offence where a person fails to disclose to the police information in relation to certain serious offences, including sexual offences against children and vulnerable persons. The introduction of statutory vetting arrangements for people involved in working with children and vulnerable adults, including those working in schools, and the enactment of the Children's First Act 2015. As part of my Department's ongoing work to improve child protection measures across the education sector, the Department's Inspectorate introduced child protection and safeguarding inspections in February 2019 as a new form of specialised child protection inspection. And lastly, these child protection and safeguarding inspections are designed to check that school boards and staff members are implementing the 2017 child protection and safeguarding procedures and will provide a further level of inspection in primary and post-primary schools.
Thank you, Minister Deputy Quinlivan.
So thank you for your response, Minister. So you just confirmed that nobody has been compensated under the redress scheme. I just want to echo the comments again of Taoiseach, because they are very important. And he said the state could have acted but did not. And he also says that the compensation scheme is not working. Minister, you're new in this department, and I would have hoped you'd take a different approach to your predecessors. I wrote to you on the 23rd of October, letter here, congratulating your appointment as Minister and asking you to meet the survivors of abuse which occurred at Crayley National School in Limerick as a priority. It should be one of your top priorities. But nobody from your department or yourself bothered to reply to my letter. You should meet with these men, Minister. You should listen to their horrific stories. You should hear firsthand the horrendous abuse they suffered as children by their teacher. And this is proven in court. And then it might actually dawn on you that something needs to be done about it. It's scandalous how these men have been treated by Fine Gael, and you ought to be shamed if you intend to continue this approach. I don't want you to reply to me, which you have done, the previous scheme and this scheme and that scheme, and you know the story. You know this government are blocking these men accessing the redress they absolutely deserve. Their childhoods were ruined by paedophiles and their lives scarred by the abuse. The very least they deserve is to be treated with dignity and respect and to be provided for the hurt and loss they have suffered because of the failure of the state to protect them when they were children. They don't want to hear words of sympathy or empty words or whatever. They want you to take action, Minister. And I would repeat the request I made to you in October last year, is to sit down with myself and maybe one or two of the lads and discuss this.
Yeah, look, just briefly, I'd just want to thank the Deputy again, and you know, when we talk about this issue, it's a difficult thing to try to articulate the thoughts and sentiments of people who have gone through this and have had basically not just their youth stolen, but also massive impact on their adult life, and continues to be that way. I do take this very, very seriously. I am looking forward to seeing what the outcome of former High Court Judge Iarlaith O'Neill's report and assessment on those 20 cases, and I will form my own judgment in the aftermath of that. But I'm also interested in what recommendations he may and which he will put forward when he's finished his own deliberations, and they will be accepted, and they will be accepted in full, and it's important to put that on the record of the House. But it would be remiss of me here today not to mention the fact and reiterate the words of the Taoiseach that there's something not working here. The scheme is not working. When you have 50 applications, 5 are still due for assessment, but 20, none of them, 45, have been refused, and that is just, there's something wrong here, and we have to look at ways of getting it right. It's the least we can do to try to bring a bit of peace to people who have endured and continue to endure such a heavy weight, and I certainly believe that we can do that collectively. You've expressed, like many other people in this House, Deputy, to meet with different groups and different survivor groups. I've met with a number of them at this stage, but at some stage in the future, I'd be happy to sit down with yourself and, as you call them, the lads from Limerick, at any time in the future. I'd be happy to do that.